My name's Daniel, and this happened about 2 years ago when I was living in a small apartment complex just outside of Chicago. I had just broken up with my girlfriend at the time and needed a cheap place to crash that wasn't her couch or my parents' basement. So I moved into this older, kinda beat-up building that looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 80s. The rent was dirt cheap, and the landlord didn't ask too many questions, so I didn't either. It wasn't great. The walls were thin, the water took forever to heat up, and the hallway lights would flicker on and off like a bad horror movie, but it was mine. Anyway, most of the neighbors kept to themselves, which I appreciated. The building wasn't very big. There were only 6 units total. I was in 4C. Next to me, in 4B, lived this really quiet guy. I didn't see him often, but when I did, he gave off a weird vibe. Not creepy exactly, just off. He was probably in his late 40s, balding, pale, always wore the same gray hoodie and jeans, no matter the weather. I never got his name. He never said more than a word or two. Most times I'd pass him in the hallway, say hey, and he'd just kind of grunt or nod. No big deal. Some people just like to be left alone, but the weird stuff started about a month after I moved in. It was a Tuesday, and I remember that because I had just finished eating takeout and was watching reruns of The Office. That's when I heard it, this really faint scratching sound. At first I thought it was coming from outside, maybe a branch hitting the window or something, but when I muted the TV, I realized it was coming from my wall. The wall I shared with 4B. It sounded like fingernails. Light, slow scraping. It would go on for a few seconds, then stop. Then again, like someone was drawing shapes with their fingernails on the other side of the wall. It creeped me out, but I didn't think too much of it. Maybe he had a pet or something. But it kept happening, almost every night around the same time, a little after midnight. The same slow scratching. And sometimes, I'd hear a low humming noise too, like someone whispering a song under their breath. It got to the point where I couldn't sleep, so I left a note under his door. Nothing aggressive, just a polite, "Hey, I think I can hear some noises at night. Maybe keep it down." You know, normal neighbor stuff. The next day, the note was gone. That night, the scratching stopped. I figured it worked. Problem solved, right? Except that same night, I woke up around 2 a.m. because I had to use the bathroom, and on my way back to bed, I noticed something taped to my door, not slipped under it, but taped. It was a Polaroid of me, sleeping in my bed. I froze. I literally just stood there, staring at it, my mouth dry. The photo was grainy and dark, but it was unmistakably me, lying under my blanket, mouth half open. I felt sick. I looked around, but the hallway was empty. No sound, nothing. I called the police, obviously. They showed up, looked around, asked a few questions. They knocked on 4B's door, but no one answered. They said they couldn't really do anything without more evidence, and left. After they left, I seriously considered packing up and staying at a motel, but again, I was broke. I pushed a chair in front of my door and kept a kitchen knife on my nightstand. For the next few days, nothing happened. No scratching, no photos, but I couldn't relax. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked suspicious. Then, about a week later, I came home from work and saw that my door was slightly open. I know I locked it. I always lock it. I pushed it open slowly, heart racing. Everything looked the same. Nothing seemed stolen. But then I noticed the chair I kept in front of the door was gone. I found it in the hallway, facing 4B, like someone had sat there, watching. That was it. I called the landlord and demanded to know who the guy in 4B was. He sounded uncomfortable immediately, said the guy was quiet but reliable, always paid rent on time, never caused problems. I pressed him for more. He eventually admitted the guy had been there for over a decade, longer than anyone else in the building. Said he inherited the unit from a relative who passed away. I hung up, packed a bag, and slept at my friend's place for a few nights. When I came back to grab more stuff, there was police tape across 4B's door. I found out later what happened. Apparently, the guy hadn't been seen in over a week. Someone complained about a smell. The landlord finally entered the unit and found the guy's body. He had been dead for days. But here's the part that still messes with my head. They estimated he had been dead at least a week before. I got that photo taped to my door, which means someone else had been in there. Or worse, he was dead, but someone was still moving around in that apartment. They never figured it out. The case just kind of faded away. No arrests, no suspects. I moved out the next day. Didn't even ask for my deposit back. I still have that Polaroid. I keep it locked in a drawer. A reminder to always trust my gut, because now, every time I move into a new place, I find myself staring at the door next to mine, wondering, who's living there? And are they watching me while I sleep? This isn't really a story I ever expected to tell, but lately, I've been thinking about it more and more, and I feel like I need to get it off my chest. I live in a quiet suburb, one of those older neighborhoods with big trees, cracked sidewalks, and neighbors who mostly keep to themselves. I've been here for about 12 years now. It's peaceful, safe, the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked during the day, and everyone waves when they pass by it at least. It used to be. The house next door to me had been empty for a while. A couple moved out right before the pandemic hit, and it just kind of sat there. Overgrown lawn, dusty windows, the whole 9 yards. I almost called the city about it a few times, but then one afternoon, a moving truck showed up. I was sitting on my front porch like I usually do after lunch, reading. I watched a man step out of the truck, late 30s maybe, tall, stocky build, kind of rough looking. He was wearing a gray hoodie, even though it was close to 40 degrees out. He kept to himself, didn't wave, didn't say a word to the moving crew, just pointed and gave short, quiet directions. Over the next few days, I saw him come and go a few times, always at odd hours, sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning. His windows were always covered, blinds pulled tight. I figured maybe he worked nights or something. But here's the thing that really started to bother me. I never saw any lights on, even at night. The house was completely dark, like no one was living there. But his truck was always parked in the same spot, and sometimes, I swear, I'd see a shadow move past the curtains upstairs, just for a second, like someone pacing. But no light, no TV glow, nothing. Then, about 2 weeks after he moved in, I heard something. Around 3 a.m., I was up because our dog had to go out. As I was standing in the kitchen, I heard this faint knocking, not on my door, on his, repetitive, rhythmic. I peeked through the window, expecting maybe someone was outside, but there was no one at his front door. It was coming from inside the house. I watched for a few minutes. The sound stopped. I figured maybe I was just tired. Maybe he was hanging something up, or maybe there was a pipe knocking. Who knows? I didn't think much of it, until it happened again the next night, and the one after that. That's when I started keeping a little journal. I'm not crazy or anything, I just needed to make sure I wasn't imagining things. And the more I wrote down, the more I noticed how many weird things were going on. He never brought groceries in, never put his trash cans out, never checked the mail, but he was there. I knew that much. Then one morning, I caught a glimpse of him from my upstairs window. He was digging in the backyard. At first I thought maybe he was gardening, but it wasn't that kind of digging. He had a tarp laid out. Something long and heavy was wrapped in it. I won't lie, called the police. I didn't tell them about the digging. I just said I was worried because my new neighbor hadn't come outside in days and I thought he might be sick or hurt. They sent someone to do a wellness check. I watched from behind my curtains. The officer knocked for a while. No answer. Then, he walked around the back and stopped. I don't know what he saw, but he radioed for backup almost immediately. Within minutes, 2 more cars showed up, then an unmarked one. Eventually, they brought him out in handcuffs. He looked calm. Like this wasn't a big deal to him. His hoodie was stained, his face pale. He didn't say a word as they put him in the cruiser. That afternoon, crime scene tape went up around the yard. The tarp I'd seen him dragging. There were 2 of them. One was empty. The other, they carried it out on a stretcher. The news said, very little. Just that remains were found, and the man was a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. But the cops told me unofficially that he'd been squatting in that house without anyone knowing. He'd broken in through the back and changed the locks himself. The previous owners had left a bunch of old furniture and junk in the basement, so it looked like someone lived there. But there were no utilities turned on, no electricity, no water. He had been living in the dark for weeks, and those knocking sounds, they weren't knocking, they were coming from the walls. They found scratch marks in the drywall upstairs, human nails, dried blood. Someone had been trying to escape. No one knows how long the victim had been there. The autopsy said at least 10 days, maybe more. I haven't slept right since. The house is still empty. The bank owns it now. Every once in a while, a real estate agent comes by to check on it, but no one stays long. I don't think they know the full story. I keep wondering how long it would have gone on if I hadn't made that call. I wonder if I would have ended up hearing those sounds from the wall in my house someday. All I know is, I never thought I'd be grateful for insomnia. Some things aren't just creepy stories. Sometimes the monster is the one who moves in right next door. When I first moved into this neighborhood, I thought I struck gold. Quiet streets, old brick homes with character, and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. It was exactly what I needed after spending years living in a downtown high-rise where I could hear my neighbors sneeze through the wall. I moved into a 2-story colonial on a cul-de-sac, quaint, clean, and way under market value. That should have been my first red flag. Honestly, the house to my right was different. Unlike the manicured lawns and trimmed hedges around the rest of the street, this one looked untouched. The paint on the porch railings was peeling. The blinds in the windows were permanently shut. The lawn wasn't overgrown exactly, but it was clear no one gave it much love. But the weirdest part, that house had one of those old metal mailboxes mounted by the front door, and it was overflowing. Envelopes, magazines, some yellow with age, just crammed in like nobody had touched it in weeks or months. Naturally, I asked the real estate agent about it before signing anything. She just shrugged and said, "Oh, that's Mr. Ledbetter's place. Harmless old man. Lived there for decades. Bit of a recluse. Fine," I thought. Creepy neighbor, whatever. I wasn't here to make friends. For the first few weeks, I didn't think much about it. I work remote and mostly kept to myself, but occasionally, when I'd take out the trash late at night or let my dog out in the backyard, I'd get that feeling, the someone's watching me feeling. You know what I mean. It makes your skin itch, even though there's no logical reason for it. One night, I swear I saw someone standing at Mr. Ledbetter's upstairs window. The blinds were still drawn, but I could see the faintest sliver of a figure between the gaps. Not moving, just there. I told myself I imagined it, but then, stuff started happening that I couldn't explain. At first, it was small things. I'd leave my garbage bin by the curb, and the next morning it would be turned facing the wrong direction. Once or twice as whatever, but it became consistent. Every Thursday morning, without fail, my bin was rotated 180 degrees, always perfectly aligned with the sidewalk. Then I started hearing noises, always around 3 a.m. scraping, dragging sounds coming from the side yard. My bedroom is on the second floor, and if I cracked the window just slightly, I could make out what sounded like slow, deliberate footsteps on gravel. My backyard is fenced, but the fence between my yard and Mr. Ledbetter's is warped at the bottom. Something or someone could slip through. I told my coworker about it during a Zoom call one morning. He laughed and said, "Dude, sounds like you've got a crypto keeper next door." About 2 months in, I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted answers, so I did something stupid. One afternoon, I walked over and rang Mr. Ledbetter's doorbell. The chime echoed hollow through the house, and I immediately regretted it. I was about to walk away when I heard it, a soft creak behind the door. Someone was there, watching. Then nothing. No voice, no footsteps, just silence. I left in a hurry, but that night, I saw him, clear as day. It was around 2:30 a.m. I couldn't sleep, so I was downstairs drinking water in the kitchen. I happened to glance out the window over the sink, and I kid you not, Mr. Ledbetter was in his backyard. No flashlight, no cane, just standing there in the dark, head tilted like he was listening to something. He was facing my house. He didn't move. I turned off the kitchen light so he couldn't see me, and stood there for 10 straight minutes, just watching. He didn't budge. Eventually, I crept upstairs, closed all the blinds, and tried to pretend I didn't see any of it. The next morning, I told myself it was a dream, maybe even sleepwalking. Things escalated from there. 3 nights later, I woke up gasping for air. My bedroom was filled with this awful smell, like mold and iron. My dog was barking like crazy, scratching at the bedroom door. I opened it and followed her downstairs, and what I saw nearly made me fall over. The front door was wide open. I know for a fact I locked it. I ran to the door, slammed it shut, and checked the entire house with a baseball bat in hand. Nothing. No sign of a break-in. Just that smell and a faint, muddy footprint in the foyer. Not mine. Definitely not my dog's. It was bare. No tread, just toes and heel. Like someone walked into my house without shoes. I called the police, obviously. They took a report, walked through the house, and gave me a look like I was wasting their time. They knocked on Mr. Ledbetter's door too. No answer. But then one of the cops, this younger guy, must have been new, pulled me aside before they left. He said, "You didn't hear this from me, but that guy. No one's seen him in over a decade. There's a report from like 2012, maybe. Someone called in a wellness check. Nothing came of it. Doors locked. No signs of life." I asked what happened. He just shrugged and said, "Some people want to be left alone." I would have accepted that if I hadn't seen him again the next night. I looked out my upstairs window and saw him standing at the edge of his yard, directly beneath the broken fence plank between our properties. His face was tilted up toward me, pale, hollow eyes, like he didn't even have pupils, just white orbs. I ducked down, heart racing, and didn't look again until morning. There were fresh prints in the dew-covered grass leading up to my side of the fence. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've installed cameras, motion lights. Hell, I even replaced my locks. But the weirdest part, every morning I still find the camera facing Mr. Ledbetter's house has been turned to the side. Not broken, not disabled, just gently nudged out of view. I don't know who or what lives in that house. All I know is, he's watching me, and now, I'm watching him back. But I'm terrified for the day he decides to come back inside.